Okay, everybody, welcome to the last State of the Snowpack for the year. I don't mean to pick on you, but you look like the perfect librarian. Can you show them all how to do a perfect librarian shush right now? On the count of three, we're all going to do a shush. 1, 2, 3, shh. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming out. It's kind of a special night because it's International Women's Month, and yeah, I know, right? Don't let me mansplain that one to you. So we have to do some shout outs to the women who are behind State of the Snowpack, particularly our good friend Kath Peone, who is the director of our operations. She makes this thing happening. Unfortunately, she bailed on us tonight because she had a baby. And so she's watching the live stream from home with her kids. I want everyone to yell, "Congratulations, Kath," at the top of their lungs. 1, 2, 3. And you just woke the baby. You know how hard it is to get those things asleep. We also want to make a few some noise for some other wonderful women we have in this program. We've got the queen of the rodeo at Avalanche Ranch, Miss Wendy Lewis. I saw her here tonight. And of course, Daisy Duke of the Roots of Hazard. We got Julianne Chapman, who was a presenter earlier. Make some noise for Julianne. And speaking of roofing, that snowmobile could be yours. Imagine owning a snowmobile that's powered by supporting Avalanche Conversations. At the end of this month, we're going to draw for that amazing snowmobile, and you can all the money is going to go to State of the Snowpack. This thing's been generously donated by Polaris, and of course we got our great prizes here tonight that we're going to go through, and we're going to raffle those tonight. So make sure you're a part of these raffles, because that's what makes this thing happen. It makes us be able to live stream this, which makes us having this at the bar for free. So let's get into this here. State of the Snowpack. We want to start with our land acknowledgement. I'm going to get you to do another shush, okay? 1, 2, 3. Shh. Oh, I like that. We want to acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw people, the Syilx, and the Ktunaxa people. We feel privileged and grateful to be here and honor the ongoing presence of the Snuneymuxw at this land. We're mindful of how we carry ourselves today, so to demonstrate our intentions to honor our land, water, and all beings. And a little disclaimer, the information we present of our observations is to the best of our ability. This presentation does not replace actual avalanche training. Sign up for an AST or CAA course this winter. What you do with the information we present tonight is your responsibility. Use it responsibly. If you guys do not have any formal avalanche training, I want to shout out Kootenay Backcountry Guides, our good friend Judson, who is a big part of this. So everyone make some noise for Judson. So what is the State of the Snowpack? It's that simple. Community conversations, saving lives in the backcountry. And it's so great to see everybody here tonight and everybody live streaming who are being a part of this conversation to help us all be a little bit more safe this year. And we could not do it, again, without these sponsors like Helicat Canada, Arc'teryx, Polaris. Make some noise for Polaris. Donating a snowmobile for us. That's all the money goes back to this program. Hub Insurance, Selkirk, Climb, Valhalla Pure, Rome, and Village Ski Hut, who have some prizes for us tonight. Make some noise for all them. And we have some chapter sponsors as well. Ritalic, Equa, Mountain Med Consulting, The Royal. Make some noise for The Royal. Country Guides, Jefferson's Baby. She Shreds, that's Julianne Chapman's, her company. Whitewater, The Prestige, who has a great prize tonight. Kiefer Lake, and Backroads Brewing. Has anyone tried the Backroads State of the Snowpack beer? Yeah. So if you have a drinking problem, please support us with your drinking problem and buy that beer, because those proceeds have given us almost $1,000 for this program tonight. So thanks so much to the Backroads. And like I said, we got to see you on that sled. Oh my gosh, you on that snowmobile, me on the back, into the sunset. Come on. So the end of the month is when the raffle ends. We're going to draw it on April 5th. Make sure you enter often, and that's for anyone who lives in BC. On the live stream, you can buy tickets for this one as well. This guy here, we wanted many people to buy as possible. That's just for the people inside the room tonight, not for the live streamers. Awesome. And then come to the website for more, stateofthesnowpack.com. You can follow us on their socials as well and sign up for the newsletters and discover the events that are happening across Canada, helping these conversations keep people safe. Oh man, the man who needs no introduction, Wes's best friend, the Duke of Hazard tonight. Anyone know who Jason Wishlow is? Jason Wishlow's been a part of this thing almost since the start, and he's got a great talk about what's happening tonight. He's going to talk to you about the current state of the snowpack, as well as a really important organization, Mountain Muskox. Hey, let's make a ton of noise to get him up here right now.
Good evening. So current state of the snowpack is, before we do that, I put the slide in the wrong place, but every time I stand on this stage from here on out, I'm gonna make sure we give a shout out to Judd, who we lost this fall, and we miss you, we love you, and we carry your spirit with us. I know when I'm out there shredding POW, I think of that guy all the time, and he was stoked for everybody, including himself, but the secondhand stoke was one of the big things that he was keen on. So here's to Judson, and yeah, for everything that he helped build here, and boy, do we miss you. So current state of the snowpack is constantly changing and tricky. And we've had a really interesting year. We've had sun, we've had snow, we've had rain, we've had wind. It seems like it changes about every 12 hours, and it's been creating some challenging conditions that we're going to talk about tonight. So our seasonal history here. This is how much water is accumulated in the snowpack at Redfish Creek. We've been following this, or been showing this for a number of years at State of the Snowpack. I want everybody to look. We're the blue line here right now, and the blue line is looking really good. Here's our historical average in the middle, and this is the last 3 years. So we're way above normal at Redfish. The thing is, it sometimes doesn't feel like that, especially when you get below about 1,400 meters. So it's been kind of a tale of above and below elevations. You get high, and the snow's phenomenal, and it's different. It's kind of a different set of avalanche problems that we're dealing with, and as soon as you come down in elevation, the snowpack tapers, and there's places that we could generally ski that we're still kind of avoiding, and still low elevation south facing slopes are really there's no snow. There's you can still go mountain biking in Kootenay right now and probably have a great day. So it's a lot of snow, which is good for us in the whole scheme of water that's available. And let's hope we keep building and we have a nice slow runoff, so we're not burning to the ground this summer and choking on smoke, because none of us like that. So notable storms and our layers. So October, January, I'll just do a synopsis of our season. Highlighted by significant precip events with fluctuating freezing levels, and led to the formation of a whole bunch of melt freeze crusts, freezing rain crusts, in the mid to lower snowpack. And these layers are generally well bonded, are not showing any significant results to testing currently. Later in the spring, problems like that can kind of rear their heads, when all of a sudden you get an isothermal snowpack and might get climax avalanches down to ground. But currently, right now, these are not our problems. Our problems start a little bit higher up. So January came around after all this fluctuation in freezing levels, and we finished a warm storm January 13th. We finished with freezing levels to above 3,000 meters. So for everybody here, Weimar Peak, 2,400 meters. And so that's these freezing levels are well above the height of Weimar Peak. And inevitably, that formed this massive burly knife resistance melt freeze crust at all elevations and on all aspects. And then that after that happened, it stopped snowing. And then we had 2 weeks basically of like a crust, terrible ski conditions. And I'm sure people will remember, like it was, I have a really good buddy, Greg Barnhouse, who probably loves to ski more than anybody I've met. And he came into the office one day up at Whitewater, and he's like, it's my first day in 10 days. And I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. The guy would be out there skiing no matter what. And so it just was a testament to how poor the ski conditions were when a guy like that decided he was going to take a break. But during that time, like cold, clear, we got this. So massive, massive surface hoar, formed in different places. And then, like this is ideal surface hoar building. This is down in the meadow below Whitewater, right by the Beacon Basin, if people know where that is, the Avalanche, the transceiver training area. And, this was like, would fit in the palm of your hand. It was massive surface hoar. And this layer was definitely more prominent in shaded tree line elevations where it seemed to persist. And then all of a sudden February came around, and right when we thought that drought would never end, all of a sudden it started snowing. So February, we had decent storms. There was nothing like over the top extraordinary, but storms would come in. It delivered really, really good snowfall and started covering that surface hoar. We had a cold spell just before Valentine's Day, and then another surface hoar layer was buried on the 14th. But there was some really high quality skiing and a lot of days at moderate hazard. And then another surface hoar layer was buried on the 25th of February. And so the load was slowly increasing over the 28th and the 14th. So, during February, all of a sudden, 123 centimeters accumulated over top of the 28th of January surface hoar and 95 centimeters over the 14th. So those layers, were sitting pretty deep in our snowpack. And those 2 persistent weak layers were about to wake up. So late February, dramatic increase in persistent slab activity. So persistent slabs, what we call like those surface hoar layers, you get a bunch of snow, starts to settle and accumulate. Lots of times they'll just sit there and wait, and sit there and wait, and sit there and wait. And, like moderate hazard, we're not seeing avalanches. There's not enough slab density. There's not enough load on top of them for somebody to go out there and trigger an avalanche on these layers. But eventually, they persist in the snowpack. If they're not really breaking down in places, they're preserved, and you get enough millimeters, something happens, you get warming trends, and these layers all of a sudden start to go. And farther north, we started to see earlier than here because they had more snow. When they have more snow, it adds more load onto those lower weaknesses, and those layers start to wake up. And we'll follow trends, and you could actually see those avalanches starting to migrate south as we got more snow on top of them. Large and surprising avalanches began to occur. I was skiing with Ben Westrick, one of our forecasters, ran into a friend of his, Callum Cathro. Well, he's a beauty. But so this guy Callum was talking, and I talked to Ben, and I was like, wow, I'm going to use this guy's quotes. So thank you, Callum, because it's really it resonated with me. But he said, you know what? Conditions are changing, but people's perception of the hazard is clearly not. You know? So all of a sudden we're starting to see different avalanches, but they're sporadic. They're in different places. And it gets easy to get kind of ingrained in moderate skiing hazard. You're not seeing anything move, but it's a good idea to really start paying attention. Like if you're reading Avalanche Canada, you just start seeing mins. It's like, okay, that was a random event, you know, like all of a sudden there's a large avalanche. Like things are starting to change, and to try and pay attention to that, it's a challenge for all of us, but it's really, really important, you know? So trying to change that perception when we have such a significant problem, kind of like this real sleeping dragon that's sitting lower in the snowpack that's all of a sudden about to, you know, really start to react to light loads from skiers, riders, or sledders. So I'm going to go through a bunch of avalanche slides, and it's kind of like a timeline here. But first one in our region was over in Quah Basin. That's just south of Whitewater. And it was on February 15th. And 3 guys were touring out in Quah, started feeling some whumps. And then, you know, boom. I don't know if we can see from the back of the room, but, you know, like these are really quite deep crowns. They were probably like 50, 60 plus centimeters deep. And these guys remoted this avalanche. So remote means you're not physically triggering it on the slope. You're adjacent to the slope, you know, maybe from here to the back wall away, and all of a sudden an avalanche starts. And it's just, that's typical of surface horror. And when these guys triggered this avalanche, how they noticed is that they started to smell green trees, because it was a size 3. It had broken a bunch of trees, and they were on the ridge beside it, and they were like, why are we smelling evergreens? And then they looked to the side, and then they saw this. So it came into our office, and they're friends of ours, and it was like, it was a real kind of a wake up that all of a sudden something was changing and happening. February 21st, Evening Ridge. Jacob Erickson, I'm going to talk about this after, but triggered a northeast aspect at 2,000 meters on the January 28th surface HOR, and was lucky that he was not involved, and gave a really poignant and I think just eloquently stated kind of min report and Instagram post that we're going to go through, and I'm really, really grateful that he put himself out there, because I think we can all learn a whole lot from that. Yeah, here's to him for, standing up and keeping other people safe. It's a hard thing to do. February 27th, Evening Ridge. Kyle Gorenko, former patroller, works up at White Grizzly, remoted from 5 meters away. Northeast aspect, 2,000 meters, a size 2.5. So here's our surface HOR layer starting to fail. February 28th, 6 Mile, Kootenay Backcountry Guides. East aspect, 2,100 meters, several size 2 to 2.5. This ridge line here, it triggered, and then there were sympathetics all the way to that far ridge of size 2 to 2.5 avalanches. So that surface HOR preserved there and was starting to run. And that was, they suspect that was on the mid-February, so the 14th surface HOR layer crust. February 27th in the Bonington Range is where we think this happened. An east aspect, 1,750, another remote avalanche from 50 meters away. Those crowns are likely, like I say, in the 50, 60, 70 centimeter range. And then February 28th, north aspect, 2,100 meters, ski cut, skier accidental, but size 2.5 to 2. This was a storm slab that didn't step down any further, but reactive storm slab, in places like that, has the potential for stepping down to deeper instabilities. February 28th, tragically, 23-year-old lost his life out having fun with his friends on a sled. And this was in the Mins. Thanks, Brandon Exner, who works up at Kootenay Pass as a forecaster up there for these photos. But a size 2.5, large avalanche, and you look at where that occurred, inherently doesn't scream like massively significant avalanche terrain, but it just shows, places where surface horror is preserved, what can happen in areas like that. And then March 1st, pull one in from New Denver, a min. And what I find, and March 1st as well, Kootenay, Keith Robine submitted this. He actually presents for State of the Snowpack. He's been long time in the avalanche game. He's a wonderful guy. But southwest aspect at Kootenay, 2,100 meters, burial with head above the surface and no injuries with lost gear. The one thing I wanted to highlight about these two is that everything I've showed you before this time was like north or east aspects generally. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, you might think that these problems aren't present on solar aspects, but there you go. And it just shows that, it's a little bit surprising what these surface horror layers are doing. So West Kootenay, this was Ben Westrick again through the binoculars, but he noticed this with his naked eye from whitewater. So no binoculars, no anything, and suspect it's a size 3+ on a northeast aspect, but you could see crowns kind of running all the way down here, all the way down there. Massive avalanche, massive avalanche. And then we had Mark Austin, who does forecasting for the rail on the other side of the lake, was flying over and noticed, we believe happened on March 2nd, east aspect, tracks out at the bottom, but it looked to be, a significant size 2.5 failing on either the February 14th or January 28th behind Evening Ridge. And I just gave you a whole bunch of large avalanches and, incidents, remotes. But this is our persistent slab avalanche observations from February 21st to March 2nd in our region. So orange, red, large avalanches. These are all like size 2s, larger. But look at our region, and in basically a week here, or a week and a half to 2 weeks, that's an insane number of avalanches. And this data is really cool. It shows you kind of tree line. It shows you alpine, where they're happening. But you can see the bulk, 22, 21, 22, north aspects tree line. And that is really good information about where this layer is kind of persisting and becoming increasingly hard to deal with. So generally, the January 28th, high spatial variability. Most prevalent on east and north aspects, as we just saw there. Tree line elevation, it seems to be persisting. Alpine, I think we had some wind, it eliminated in some places, but not all. Sheltered locations, because surface horror persists, it's not laying down. When the wind starts blowing, it's not knocking it back. And definitely, I think a highlight here is areas with less skier or rider traffic. We saw people riding big aggressive lines in Weimar Bowl. Lot of skier compaction, a lot of traffic going through there. So, it's, maybe it's not there, but, don't count it out, because even in places like that, this layer seems to be kind of showing up unexpectedly, and people are like, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen, or I didn't think that was going to be there. Here's a cool graph I pulled from our InfoX, which are community sharing for operations. But this is March 1st, heli control. And so again, when we're talking spatial variability, it means that it's variable. It could be variable to terrain the size of this room. It could be variable across drainage. It can be variable across a range. But, you know, like, so where does the problem exist? And this problem has high spatial variability. It's in certain places. You'd expect it to be in places where you're not finding it, and it's kind of all over the map. So on March 1st, 26, Baldface threw 20 shots, likely like 12.5 kg bags of ammo, got significant results. 16 avalanches up to size 3 on north and east aspects. They're targeting that in their tenure, you know, to make things safer for their guests. At the same day, Snowwater threw 10 shots, got 8 no results. Nothing. Same size bags, targeting north and east aspects at tree line generally, no results. They did get 2 size 2s on the January 28th, and then a notable skier accidental, size 2.5 to 3 below tree line on an east aspect. So through all these bags, and then something like that happens. Whitewater, we, on the same day, that morning, threw 11 shots, and we got size 1 to 2s with only 1 failure that we think was suspect was on January 28th. That same day, in the R&D venue, we did have a rider trigger a size 1.5 skier accidental or trigger an avalanche on the January 28th. So, you know, like throwing all these shots up in Weimar Bowl, size 1 to 2s, you know, really with shots, we were pulling out massive cornices to the slope below, not triggering avalanches, but then, you know, like it still persists in a micro terrain feature, you know, like below tree line, which is in an extreme piece of terrain. If you get tangled up in that, not a good place to be. So high spatial variability, but again, generally far less trafficked east and north aspects at tree line is generally where this is, but not exclusively where it is. It could be anywhere. So our notable layers currently, March 3rd surface hoar, just buried the other day, and I was out on a mission today. We're doing a bit of a cleanup route and threw a couple bags and did some ski cutting. We were coming down and the snow was actually really nice and dry. And then we got to a certain elevation and it's like no real slab density, not a whole lot happening. And then we got a little bit lower, and all of a sudden you're hitting all these features and you're triggering like size 1 slabs. 10 centimeter slabs, you know, like in picking up a little bit of mass and running, but it was like really, really reactive. And then we got a couple 100 meters maybe in elevation below that, and then it just stopped because it got too moist. So that layer is present in our area. Will it end up being a persistent layer? I don't know. Time will tell. It's only got like 6 to 10 centimeters on top of it right now, so we're watching that. February 25th, surface hoar. That surface hoar was small, and again, as load increases on top of all these layers, you end up, you know, like, could it become more reactive? If it becomes more reactive, will it step down to deeper instabilities? February 14th, the mid-February surface hoar, melt freeze crust on solars. Definitely been a player in this last round of avalanches that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. January 28th, surface hoar, crust facets, talked about that, is 100% a player and is going to be a little bit of a tricky one to manage over the coming weeks into the end of the season. And then at the base of that, we have October to January. we just have numerous melt freeze crusts that again are really quite well bonded on the lower snowpack, so currently not a concern. But the real meat of our concern right now is the 14th and the 28th, and now the 25th and the 3rd may be coming into play. So here's a profile. It was done West Weimar, north aspect at 2,050 meters. And Jake Klonsky, who's over here, one of our forecasters, new level 2 from the CAA. Give him a shout out. Way to go, Jake. But so Doug, and we got a compression test easy, a sudden planar result. So again, sudden planar would be like the cash register, you know, like you hit it on the compression test and the whole block comes out right onto your lap. Compression test moderate, same thing, a sudden planar on the February 14th. But the January 28th, no surface hoar found at this location. So, and that January 28th, 84 to 100 centimeters below the surface, you know, like kind of breaking down a little bit, starting to soften. Again, this is knife resistance, pencil resistance, one finger. So pencil, you can stick a pencil in it and feel it on your wrist. But it's starting to soften a little bit, but it's still a pretty firm crust in this location. So spatial variability, again, this is producing size 2.5 or 3 avalanches, you know, sometimes less than a kilometer away. AvCan, our current danger ratings as of today at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Considerable in the alpine, considerable at tree line, and considerable below tree line. And through Friday and Saturday, the forecast is supposed to be the same. They're going to stick with considerable, and I think that's kind of consistent. You know, today maybe starts to throw a bit of a curveball into things because we did have, like, the freezing levels went up. We had rain to maybe 1,600 meters, and then I shouldn't say that word, but and then it you know, but freezing levels came down, and then it was snowing, and the skiing was actually quite good. But it's going to be interesting because we started to see a few wet, loose avalanches coming from kind of steep tree-line terrain, and that was even on north-facing aspects. So definitely the temperature, it started to greenhouse. So it'll be interesting to see if AvCan puts that in, or if it just cools and all of a sudden we've got a little bit more of a crust in other places. But as far as temperatures go, you know, this is the first time in many weeks, almost 2 months, where we actually saw freezing levels that weren't on our side. The one thing we've had the last little while is really, really good freezing levels, which has been, it's been awesome. It's been cold enough, you know, and we've gotten really good snow out of it. Avalanche Canada's problem number 1, a persistent slab. And January 28th, surface hoar, February 14th, surface hoar. You know, be aware of the potential for remote triggering. Again, you don't even have to be on the slope, and you might be able to trigger these problems. Large avalanches due to buried surface hoar, especially at tree line and below. Number 2 problem, storm slabs. So we just got, you know, 6, maybe 8 centimeters over the day. It just depends on your elevation, depends on your region. Maybe some got a little more, some got a little less. But currently right now, up to 20 centimeters of recent snow and wind may have formed reactive storm slabs, and more reactive in areas by ridgetop could step down to deeper weak layers. So again, like loaded in, if we're getting any sort of winds. We did have significant southwest winds the other day, you know, maybe, I guess, last week now, but, you know, stiffen that snow and starts to increase slab density and makes it easier to trigger. So our terrain and travel advice: avoid avalanche terrain during periods of heavy loading from new snow, wind, or rain. I think that's probably almost a generalization. I think that's just a good statement for all of us to pay attention to. If it starts chacking, it's blowing, pay attention. Temperatures come up. If you're seeing anything other than snow falling from the sky, pay attention to that for sure. Storm slab size and sensitivity to triggering will increase through the day as these storms progress, and be aware of potential for remote triggering of large avalanches due to buried surface hoar. And good time to make conservative terrain choices and avoid significant overhead hazard. Snowpack 5 to 20 from Wednesday. Fellas, rain below 1,500. 10 more in the northern parts of the region, maybe potentially tomorrow. Areas that received enough new snow have new reactive storm slabs. We talked about that. For us, it was sitting on this March 3rd surface hoar. And the new snow is overlying a crust except for shady high elevation terrain where the crust is absent. In the top 100 of the snowpack, multiple concerning persistent weak layers of surface hoar and or facets and crusts. So a very tricky, it's a challenging upper snowpack that these problems are not inherently just going to go away anytime soon. And the remaining snowpack has no current layers of concern, so that's the bottom of the snowpack where I was talking, where those crusts are really actually quite well bonded all the way to ground. So our avalanche summary, we just went through it, but Tuesday, several 1 to 1.5 persistent slabs, skiers across the region, and over the weekend through Monday, many large persistent avalanches were triggered by people, including remote triggers. And remote triggers are scary. It just highlights the sensitivity of those layers. You can log into AvCan. They've got links to those MINs, and I think it's really, really important to read through those things because we can gain a lot of information out of that. So our weather summary, moving forward into spring. It is getting increasingly challenging to forecast weather. We're seeing, we'll look at anywhere from 6 models at a time, trying to generate a weather forecast for ourselves up at Whitewater. And we can see ranges from, we had one the other day, we had one model that was showing 4 millimeters over the course of a 10-day period, and other ones were showing 40 millimeters. And it made absolutely no sense. So wide range across the map. I think most importantly is to look in the immediate, 2-3 days, weather forecasts are really, really good. And then longer range, the longer you get out, like anything, the harder it is to predict. And things are changing so dramatically now that it's really, really difficult to try and accurately predict what's going to happen a week from now, what's going to happen 2 weeks now. Is like you're throwing darts, because things can really, really change with systems shifting a little bit north, a little bit south. But in general, the next, looks like we have one little storm maybe coming in on the weekend, but a little bit of a high pressure building. So that just shows, here's our precip amounts. This is our day that's about to finish, and then we're going into Thursday, and then here towards the weekend, a little bit of wind, so potentially some storm slabs, but we're watching temperatures. So we are getting into March, and temperatures are starting to fluctuate and get warmer as the sun is a lot higher in the sky, and we're moving into spring. On this side here, we have Environment Canada. This is their long-range forecast models, the NAEFS, if you look it up, NAEFS, and then you can choose the city. Nelson is one of the regions or one of the cities that you can choose in BC, and it'll give you our temperatures up here. So generally, maybe seasonal, it looks like a bit of a cooling trend, and then kind of increasing temperatures, some outlying models showing significant spikes towards the mid, sort of St. Patrick's Day, I guess, 17th, 16th, where temperatures go way up. And this is our precipitation here. So you can see our precip. Looks like kind of steady bits of precip, which when we are in March is a good thing because of the convective nature of storms. So, you know, like when air lifts, it needs to drop all of its moisture, and you get like that's what a thunderstorm is. It's a convective lift. And so in March, at whitewater, you get these convective cells that can often kind of get trapped in whitewater, and we can get heavy precip rates, you know, gusty winds, but we can pick up 8 or 10 centimeters in the matter of 2 to 3 hours, which makes for great skiing. But it's also something to pay attention to when you're out there touring. So again, long range, really, we'll show this as we're moving into spring, but who knows? And Avalanche Canada's confidence currently is moderate, and they're very confident that there are persistent slabs in the snowpack. Okay, we know that, but pretty uncertain about how likely they are to trigger because of the variable distribution and because of the sensitivity of these layers and where it is you're going to find them. So looking ahead into March and the end of the season. I always talk about this in the patrol room. So right before Julius Caesar got whacked, he had all kinds of warnings, and they were like, look, Julius, you know, bad things are going to happen. He's like, no, it's okay. Everything's going to be fine. It's not a concern. But, you know, like it kind of became a bit of a heli-ski adage, beware the Ides of March, because you get these warnings. And the other thing you get is that we're moving into March and we're getting, you know, like it's been quite a season. People have been out skiing. You can tend to get a bit tired, get a bit complacent, and let your guard down. And that's not the time now. It's like you got to persist through the entire season because we're moving into a very tricky time, and we're moving into a time where things are going to be in a constant state of change. And now's the time not to relax, but to try and up your game and really be paying attention to what's happening all around us. So there are signs, and we don't want to end up like Julius, that's for sure. The winter's been inconsistent and unpredictable. It's led to our current persistent weak layers and the avalanche conditions being the way they are. And thing is, we've got several weeks ahead of us with an increasingly challenging snowpack, persistent weak layers that are, you know, becoming really quite reactive. And longer days, deeper snowpack in areas brings great opportunities for touring out there, but it's going to be a tricky time with new problems, you know, like I talked about this 25th surface horror from February and this March 3rd, you know, those may persist. They may become persistent weaknesses in our snowpack as time progresses and snow falls on top of them. So, and we've got those problems maybe generating, and we've got older ones that are lingering. And while we're here, anybody here in the last day or two have something we haven't seen on the mins, you know, they'd like to share? But we'll have opportunity later if anybody does, but please bring it to my attention because, like I say, it'll help us learn about all of this. Should you post them in? Yes. Was there weather? Did you see avalanches? Do you know if the riding was good or bad? Were there signs of instability? If you checked a box, submit them in. That information means so much. It really helps AvCan with their forecasting. It helps us forecast at whitewater, where we check the mins every single day to see if there's something that we should be aware of that's occurring in our area neighboring whitewater. So avalanche.ca, and it's a pretty easy thing to do. So tonight's takeaways, there's a lot of winter yet to come. You know, like we're looking, you know, like even after whitewater closes, I'm sure there's a number of people super keen in the room who are going to be out there touring. And the snowpack's going to continue to build. The snowpack's going to continue to change. Avalanche Canada is going to continue to provide forecasts, so please pay attention. Persistent weak layers from February 25th, the 14th, and 28th are likely going to be reactive for the foreseeable future. So we'll see if there's weather events or anything happens that changes these layers and start to make it that they settle out. But in the immediate future, it's definitely not happening. These layers are there and they're reactive. Then there's still plenty of time for new persistent weak layers to form in the snowpack. You know, just because we're getting into spring doesn't mean that we're not going to see these layers kind of persist and then, you know, maybe persist far after whitewater closes on the 5th or 6th, I think, of this year. New storm wind slabs will continue to increase loads on lower persistent weaknesses. So, you know, like weather's going to happen. We're going to get storms. We're going to get wind slabs. We're going to get storm slabs. These things will be in the snowpack. So it's a really, really good idea to pay attention to them because you trigger one of these lower layers may get triggered as well. And freezing levels are going to continue to increase as spring warming increases. So watch for sun effect, heavy precip amounts with gusty winds, given the convective nature of spring storms, like I was talking about earlier. And I think the most important thing is please exercise patience when we're dealing with persistent weaknesses. It's a hard thing to do, you know, like especially because we're in seasons now where you know, the POW train used to be far more consistent. And sometimes now it feels like we're standing at the station for way too many days. So as soon as it snows, everybody wants to get on board. But when there's persistent weaknesses in the snowpack, that's where it's really, really challenging. You know, like we love skiing POW. That's why we go out there. It's why we do what we do. But it's, you know, sometimes even though it looks really, really tempting, maybe it's a better time to pump the brakes and give those layers a little bit of time to settle out so we can all keep ourselves safe. And just as we go to the intermission, I just want to give a shout out to Morgan, who's probably watching. So Morgan founded State of the Snowpack, and I just find it really cool. We've got 4 visiting patrollers right now from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And they're on an exchange. We got to spend some time. Great fellas. But they, State of the Snowpack, started in Jackson Hole when Morgan Dinsdale, our founder with Judson, was down there. She was working, and she saw that, and she was like, wow, this is really, really cool. It's amazing. And she brought that vision, and she brought it here to Nelson, and now here we are, I think, with 12 chapters across Canada, and people, you know, from Fernie to Whistler to Nelson to Rossland, all sitting in places like this and having these conversations to make us all feel safer. So pretty cool to see you guys here. You know, like it's really, it just hit home, you know, like the fact that they said there's another one happening in a week or two or something down in Jackson, that that it's here now, and it's in so many places, and it's doing so many wonderful things for people. So thank you, Morgan, for having the vision, and thank you, Judd, for getting on the ride, and I'm super stoked to be a part of it, and thank you guys very much. So appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much, everybody. We're going to do about a 30-minute intermission. You guys are going to go to the bar. You're going to tip really well. You're going to buy some State of the Snowpack, Backroads Brewing. You guys are going to get your phones out, and you're going to make sure you select some of these prizes. And I'm going to throw one more prize. Who wants one more prize? Okay, POW train. POW train. There's a lot of ways to travel through the backcountry. None as good as the POW train. We got a Keeper Lake shirt for whoever comes up with the best POW train haiku after the break. Okay, we'll see you then. Noise for Jay Wishlow with that great presentation he did. Okay, librarian, we need one more shush out of you. 1, 2, 3, shh. I like that. So again, it's International Women's Month, and we got to throw it out to all those ladies there, especially Kath Paone, who is watching from home. We might look like we're doing here, but we are freaking scrambling. There's just 3 dudes here today. We're trying to do the job of 1 woman, and we are struggling. So we're going to close down our Polaris, our tonight's raffle. So if you haven't got something for tonight, haven't bought anything tonight, it's too late. Who's got ourselves a POW train haiku they want to state and win a prize? You were talking that you had one, right? Oh no. Okay, well maybe I'll give you mine. Who do we have next? Up next, are you guys ready? Drum roll. Mountain Muskox with more Jay Wishlow. So for you guys who don't know what Mountain Muskox is, it's a local organization that gives support for people who've been through mountain trauma. I mean, it's International Women's Month. They want to let you know that it is primarily women who go to these things, and although it is International Women's Month, we'd love to see more guys out there as well. Everyone getting the help they need for anyone who's been through a mountain trauma. And to talk more about it, and one more thing, this is a free service for you, so it's therapy and support at zero cost. But to talk more about it, let's bring up one more time, Mr. Jay Wishlow.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so first of all, I want to say a big thank you to Mountain Muskox for entrusting me to deliver this information. I'm obviously not the guy who's trained in it. Both Cheryl and Kat, who are involved in Mountain Muskox in Nelson, were unavailable tonight, and we had a second presenter was unable to present. So I'm gonna deliver this information on their behalf to the best of my ability. But I think it's a really, really incredible initiative, and I think it's starting to gain a lot more traction, and it's helping a lot of people. And I think helping a lot of people is really, really key. That's why we're all coming to these events. So their statements, send me this email, but it's pertaining, we'll get a little bit into the heavy side of what it is that we do. And we've, recent avalanche fatalities, and it can be widespread, you look at what just happened in Donner Pass in California outside of Lake Tahoe, where 8 people lost their lives in an avalanche, to Kootenay Pass, which I'll talk about a little bit today, where a young guy, only 23 years old, lost his life. And those events are inherently tragic, and they're very, very, they can stir up a lot of emotions, I think, for all of us as backcountry users. And I think a lot of people like to pass judgment on what people did, maybe state, I would never do something like that, or that's, and what's wonderful, that Kat sent me, it's like the impulse is deeply human. It's our nervous system trying to regain a sense of control of our environment. Something that we all love to do so much can bring so much tragedy and heartbreak. And if we feel we can identify those mistakes, we can reassure ourselves that it can't happen to us, that we can stay safe. A feeling of protection in the face of something that's at times profoundly uncontrollable. So Mount Muskox gathers in circles, hear from accident survivors. What lingers most is not physical impact of what happened there, but the narrative, what did you do, which can turn into deep shame that gets carried forward. And as soon as we carry that shame with us, it prevents healing in the people that are surrounding that, and then it never promotes the ability for all of us to kind of heal as a community, because I think whatever level you're associated in whether you're a recreationalist, whether you're a professional, I think we hear about these events and it impacts us, and sometimes in really, really profound and deep ways. So how communities learning matters, and the mind goes gently to curious about what might be driving that impulse and often it's fear. These events confront us with the real risks of being in the mountains and wanting to make sense of what's happening around us as natural. So when we move to judgment and analysis, we risk reducing a whole human life to that person's final moment. And we forget their years of experience, their love of the snow, their friendships and their depth. And we forget, I think, oftentimes that they are us. We're all just people out there who are, wanting to be in the mountains and enjoy it in the most profound way that we can. And there's risk and uncertainty when we're out there. And that loss is not about a single decision, but the inherent risk of moving through that powerful terrain that many of us undertake. And sometimes there's room for learning, but this should never overshadow the room for grief and compassion for those involved. So we want to understand why and how, and we want to make sense of it. That's our human nature. But I think it, for all of us, like if we approach this from a compassion sense first, because we're all human, and with the mountains being inherently risky, and thank you for Wendy for helping me today putting all this together. And she sat and she's like, the conversation turns like, could this be me? And how could this be me? And I think the important thing for all of us to understand is when we're in the mountains that, yes, it could be any one of us here. And that's if we do our best to kind of process that and understand that, makes us not only better kind of mountain community folk, but it just makes us better people in general. And, to approach that with compassion is really, really important. And you've seen a lot of comments online after these incidents, and like the whole social media world is so ingrained in pervasive through all of us now. And you log on and you see an incident, and then if you look at some of the comments that people make, and it's what we just talked about on why and how, and they shouldn't have been there, or that's what you get when you take those risks. And realistically, like, I guess for us as mountain people in that environment, understanding that comes from people not understanding and coming from that place of fear, and trying to figure out their environment. But I think the most important part is that, like if we just ground ourselves and think that it could be any one of us that makes a difference. But Mountain Muskox, the third Thursday of every single month, a free service, mountainmuskox.com. They're relocating in their Kootenay chapter from Salmo to Nelson. You can reach out to them and they let you know the location of where it's going to be. And this is a service that's available, whether you're a recreationalist, whether you're a worker in the industry, or whether you could be somebody who's had impact, even from knowing somebody who's been involved in a tragic accident or incident in the mountains. And if that's something you feel like you need to sit and talk about, and these the women who are running these circles are really, really wonderful, and we'll be able to help guide you in really facilitate your healing. And I think that's a really important thing, like, to acknowledge. I think for a long time, there's been a lot of like just mental health and so many people suppressing all those feelings, and especially with trauma in the mountains, if you can let that out in and feel like you're in a safe space, then you're going to be far better for it. So little bit, this is the Kootenay Pass avalanche, where the 23-year-old lost his life. And I think you look at this piece of terrain, it's underneath a power line. It's a heavily used sled area. It's not the kind of place that a lot of us would look at and think that, especially given the last little while, that a slope like that generally wouldn't be the place that you'd have an avalanche fatality. But it's obviously it's a steep feature, and it's prone to surface horror, and you have some pretty deep crowns in there, up to 80 centimeters plus. Suspect to fail on that on the January 28th surface horror. So 2 people snowmobiling and then caught, and unfortunately one young guy lost his life. And I know when I heard that, it hits really close to home. I've got a sled. I'm not very good at it, but I sure like to go out and cruise around with my buddies, and I try to keep myself in safe terrain, and I tell myself, I'm not going to go into avalanche terrain, I want to keep it chill. But sometimes, I think important for all of us to look at something like this, and you can be out there, and then there's a bunch of people, and people are cruising up and down, and you go, that looks safe, I'm going to give that a try, and and things happen, and sometimes you get caught in an area that you didn't even think that you were going to be in, because things happen so fast, especially on a sled or a snow bike, because you're covering terrain so quickly, and you can get yourself in a situation that you didn't think you were going to get in. I have no idea the thought processes, anything that led up to this incident, but I can only imagine, as a guy who's been out there sledding with his buddies, some of the feelings that must have been happening when you're having a really, really amazing day, and that day all of a sudden turns into something else entirely that nobody else even wants to think about. So again, compassion, and realizing, it could be any one of us here in this room when we're out there. There was an avalanche on Ecstasy Peak a few weeks ago. Jacob Erickson. So thank you, Jacob. I gave him a shout out earlier for really putting out a beautiful Instagram post that when I read it, I was really, really moved. I thought, that he makes so many good points that I'm going to go through here that I think we can take learnables from. That it was just a very, very brave thing to put himself out there, and we can all learn so much. And so Saturday, February 21st, caused a size 2.5, which nearly cost him the ultimate price. So his major mistakes: going alone. Okay, and we preach it, we say it, but there's something inherently freeing about being in a mountain environment by yourself, And so do I do it? I personally do not. Can I understand why some people do? Yes, I can understand why some people do. Because if you're out there standing in that environment, it's really, really wonderful. So I will always say, go ski with a buddy, go ski with a friend. It sounds like Jacob now will be doing the same thing, but I'm not going to pass judgment on him for being out there, being alone, because we don't want to pass judgment. Disregarding warning signs such as WUMPs. You're getting messages from the snowpack. Failing to test the slope before riding. putting in a good ski cut. You know, you're up there, you're stoked, you know, there's a lot going on. You want to get after it and go ride some POW because conditions were super, super good. Limited terrain and snowpack evaluations due to previous experience riding the same line. You know, you're there over and over again. Is it going to be the same? Maybe there's, you know, that thing in the back of your mind that says, yeah, that's it's good to go. I've been here before. There shouldn't be a problem. Then he triggers the size 2.5. Goes for, there's a video online. We didn't bring the video in here, but you know, he goes for a pretty good ride and then gets caught up in some trees, uninjured, and watches this thing roll away from him. And his judgments were clouded by perceived constraints, including tight weather and sunlight window. Okay, get it while it's there. Limited time in his schedule for personal riding. Filming the run, you know, you want to make it look sick, right? We're living in an age of social media. People are, you know, how many times they're doing it for the gram, right? You want to get sick footage and show your friends that how good a time you're having. Having plans immediately following, so you have a pressure right behind you. And I find this one interesting because I think the way I take climate anxiety is that we look at the nature of the winter we just had, right? And we had long spells where the skiing was, or riding was really, really poor. So climate anxiety to me speaks to the fact that it's like, it's good now, I've got to go, you know? Because the POW's not going to last. What we've seen so far is the POW, you know, get it while it's there because, you know, tomorrow, the next day, and 3 days from now, all of a sudden, the freezing levels are going to go up. We're going to have a crust. I'm not going to be able, the snow is great right now. I've got to get at it. And can that influence your decisions? 100%, because that's why we're out there. And that's where I was saying earlier about preaching patience when we're dealing with these problems. So I can completely relate to that statement. But then, I mean, the guy puts himself out there. He's not proud what he did on that day, and he's lucky to have the chance to learn. And because he's lucky to have the chance to learn, we are all lucky to have the chance to learn. So that's how I'm approaching that. And to all his family and friends, and he's, you know, like going through it, make smarter decisions moving forward, compiling a list of touring partners so that he doesn't end up in that situation again. And, you know, this is a significant avalanche with deep crowns, and I think I just want to say, you know, like I'm really, really glad first and foremost that he's okay, because we just talked about an incident where somebody was not, or somebody lost their life. And the fact that he was able to put this out there really speaks volumes, and I really, really appreciate the fact that we get the opportunity to learn from somebody like him and take those huge learnables away for what we should all do in the future. So avalanches can happen to anybody. We all make mistakes. I'm a professional. I've been doing this now for 25 years. That's me buried under the snow. I'm doing control work in Catch Basin. I was standing on a slope. It happened extremely fast. Surface hoar layer failed. All I could think was stay away from these trees. I turned left. The thing pushed me on my face. I slid downhill. Felt the snow pouring over my head. And, you know, when you think about it, I was able to stick my hand out of the snow. And then when my partner came to dig me out, I was covered up more. So he uncovered, made sure, he's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, so take a picture." And if you can look up there, I'm smiling. And then I was like, "Okay, I've had more than enough now. Please dig me out." But it happens really, really fast. And I had indications. I had warning signs. I had standing on that slope. I remember turning around to the guy who was behind me and saying, this doesn't feel good. Like that we knew what we were dealing with, and then there were different pressures that forced me into that decision. Overconfidence, feeling like I could manage that terrain, and I took 2 more steps that I shouldn't have taken, and I ended up there. And I was totally okay. I lost a pole. That's what I lost. And in the end, I learned valuable lessons. But do I ever think that could not happen to me again? No. I realize that every time we step into that mountain environment, we're all taking inherent risk. And each one of us has different risk tolerances that we're able to manage. And I can't judge anybody on what risk tolerance level they have. People have far different risk tolerance levels than I do. And so just act in a way that's, safe for you moving forward, and respect other people's decisions, and again, move forward with compassion, because I think in the end, those are the best things that we can do, and just all look after each other. And I think that's what Mountain Muskox really is trying to encourage, is just all of us coming together, to speak whatever it is you need to speak to help you heal moving forward, and keep everybody as healthy as we can be, so we're all out there being able to do what it is we love. So thank you, and I hope I did Mountain Muskox credit.
Awesome. So for anyone who's interested in contacting Mountain Muskox, it is mountainmuskox.com. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It's been amazing. It's been amazing season. It's my first year being the MC here. The last thing Judd said to me is like, "Hey Mansbridge, do you want to MC the State of the Snowpack?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, as long as you promise I won't get caught in any avalanches this year, I'm in." And so he said, "Guaranteed." And then that 1 min of the slide on West Weimer was me. So we're going to take a 5-minute intermission while we just get everything ready for prizes, because we're dumb guys and we need 5 minutes to figure this out. And the women who used to be here could do it right away. So give us 5 minutes. We'll get these prizes going.